I just got my YouTube notification that we are live.
Yes, ma'am, we're live.
All right. Okay, I see Mr. Manning. Great. So I've got one more minute. Okay, I have 5 o'clock. So I will call the meeting of the Development and Services Committee to order. Ms. Only, will you call the roll to see who we have here for committee members?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Here.
Kennedy, Manning,
Here.
Newton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for item or 2A is there for our regular session, November 19th, 2020. Those are found on pages 7 through 11 in our agenda packet. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll have Ms. Only call for the roll for approval of the minutes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Manning, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 3 is the adoption of our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Or actually, I guess I should ask staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
I do not have any changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, hearing none.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
thank you. Hearing no changes to the agenda. Yes.
I had one question, and that is of the administrator on your item number 4C. Is that considered a time-sensitive matter?
For CTIP,
So the
staff, do we have time sensitivity on this one?
yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. To the extent that we're trying to get funding from another source, we need to know whether or not the county is going to approve this so that we can seek funding from another source.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the reason I asked that, Madam Chair, is because I didn't think it was proper before the committee, based on the council rules, that all items with information are to be handed in 2 weeks prior to the committee meeting. And I noticed through emails between you and Administrator Brown that this was just done last week, a couple of days before the actual agenda was being printed. So therefore, that's why I'm wondering why it is here. If it's technically not time sensitive, only you got to take funds from one place to another. That could be worked on in the meantime until this would come back properly. So I'm just challenging the properness of it on the agenda. Maybe you could get legal input on that, please.
Okay, thank
Ms.
you.
Chair, if I may.
Yes, is that Ms. Myers?
Yes, this is Ashia Myers. Mr. Malinowski, the documentation was actually submitted to administration on December 3rd, not last week. You may have seen an email that came prior to that, but it was actually submitted December 3rd.
That's when I saw it in the email. Thank you, Ms. Myers.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. So that is 14 days.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Newton?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second it. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Only to call the roll.
Horatio,
Yes.
Manning, Newton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. So this afternoon, we have 3 items for action under number 4. Item 4A is move that Richland County discontinue its practice
Madam Chair.
of demolishing private property in the
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Manning.
I move that we approve
Yes, Mr.
items for A, B, and C, staff's recommendation.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second for that?
I'll second it for discussion. I do have a question about item 4A.
Great. It's been moved and properly seconded. And Ms. Newton, you're recognized with the question for your question.
Thank you. I don't have a problem at all with staff's recommendation here. And is Ms. Dahlia Myers here? I guess I was just trying to understand, to the extent that you can speak to it, what problem this motion was trying to solve. And you may not be able to.
Is there a question to me, Member Ms. Newton?
To whoever might be able to
Okay.
answer it.
Okay. If I recall correctly, Ms. Myers had communicated that she felt as though these properties were being demolished and taken from residents somewhat without their input and without their ability to have a say-so. And that she was hoping that, I believe that her intent was to try to put something in place from her perspective that did not allow that to take place. And so the staff did try to address that via questions that we responded to and through the documentation, that the information that was shared with those residents. They were contacted, and it was not that they walked out and this activity took place without their knowledge or without their awareness.
Thank you. And the way that I read our procedure and packet, residents are notified and given chance to remediate any problems before the county takes action. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I do have the staff that handles that directly, but yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. And just to be clear, while the motion says that the motion is to discontinue, the staff recommendation that we would be approving is to continue our current implementation. I believe that council is just a little bit more informed about how we implement this program at this point. So thank you, staff, for your work and help on this matter. Any other questions from council on items A, B, and C for approval of the staff recommendation?
Chair Bill Malinowski.
Yes, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question on that one is, why is the county able or allowed to actually go onto private property and do something? I think that was one of Ms. Myers' biggest concerns, or I won't say biggest, one of her concerns is where the property is not on a public road and it is without the property owner's consent.
Thank you. I
Sure.
think that was one of the, yes, one of the concerns. Does staff have a response for that?
Madam Chair, this is Mike Zapp with the building inspections. If I may, I'll try to answer that for him.
Yes.
The property maintenance code, as we have adopted it, doesn't distinguish between private roads, private property. What it outlines is just an unsafe structure as a whole. So therefore, the building official, by the authority of the code, can deem a structure unsafe regardless of what type of property is. Now, just to ease the mind of the council, we do not go, and we're working with legal at this time. If there's a trespassing sign, do not enter, we stop at that location and, try to take a picture from afar and then notify the owner from there. But we have put the call into legal and have been working with them in reference to what is the county's legal right to fully enter the property for the unsafe structure. So we are researching that further, but as it stands, as the code is written, it doesn't distinguish between private property or public property. It clearly states unsafe structure that are deemed unsafe.
Okay, I understand that, Mike, but the fact that you're working with legal right now seems to me that we're being asked to pass something that we don't know right now if the county could be held legally liable in a particular situation. And it seems all that information should have been brought here before asking permission to enact some type of an ordinance or continue with an ordinance as it is, regardless of what that code says. You yourself just said there are questions that legal has to answer. So why would you not get those answers before this was put in front of a committee for discussion and then up to the council for a final decision?
Sir, I would say that it's not a matter that it's a liability factor in the way that we currently do it. We just have periodically, we'll take like this, no trespassing sign and send it back through legal just to verify, to make sure that what we are doing is still correct. So way the code is written, and from legal's perspective to us, as we have been doing business, we are okay to operate as we are doing business. So I want to make sure that's clear. It's not something that we're questioning if we can do. We're just verifying that we are interpreting everything as we are correctly, and moving forward, we want to make sure we are continually correct in our decisions.
Has legal made any comment on whether or not that an individual's private property, especially with no trespassing, is there an expectation of privacy, and you taking pictures could be a violation of that expectation? Have they commented on that?
What we have been told.
Madam Chair,
Yes, is that Ms. Myers?
this is Ms. Powell.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I see we have Ms. McLean on the line. I would ask that we defer that question to legal rather than Mike answering it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McLean, would you care to speak to this?
I'll jump in, but actually, I hate to pass the buck. Larry and Brad are on the call too. I have not been the one working with Mr. Zapp on this, so if Larry or Brad wants to jump in, I mean, I will attempt to answer the question. I don't have a problem with that. But have either of you been working with Mr. Zapp on this?
Beth, I am not.
Madam Chair,
Uh,
this is Randy Pruitt.
yes, I can see who's. Okay, hi, Mr. Pruitt.
May I speak?
Yes.
Maybe I can address that. The code in Chapter 1 that was adopted by the County Council gives a right of entry to the building official if it is from the road. It doesn't matter what type of road, whether it's dirt or paved. So if our troops or our inspectors are out doing their job, then the code gives us that authority to identify an unsafe structure.
Okay, and you broke up just a little bit for me. Did you say if you can see the unsafe structure from the road?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is that how we know that there's a potentially unsafe structure there? Do people call them in?
Sometimes they call them in.
Do we
Sometimes we see them from the road.
just realize that? Okay, great.
Madam Chair,
I'd-
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Farrow was going to give us some input when he was cut off there by Mr. Pruitt. If we could get his opinion as the legal expert.
Yes, let's circle
let me
back
see.
to legal.
Yeah, I hope I'm unmuted. So I thought the motion pertained to demolishing structures, not trespassing. And I just want to make sure we're talking about the same issue.
The motion is regarding the demolishing of unsafe structures
I didn't.
that the property owners have been given the chance to remedy those. And I believe it was brought up by maybe Mr. Malinowski about going onto a private property without particular permission. Am I paraphrasing that correctly?
Gentlemen, well, I mean,
Mr.
if that's the issue. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just waiting to try and let Mr. Farrow speak.
Mr. Malinowski, am I paraphrasing your question? Okay.
All right. Yeah. Here's the deal, because trespassing is about an hour-long discussion in a training class. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about going up to a structure and there's no fence, you've got every right to go up to that structure and inspect it, just like the postman's got a right to drop some mail on your, or UPS guy, whatever. If there's a fence and there's a lock on it, then you got a different issue. If there's a fence and there's a lock and there's a sign on it, then you got a different issue. So this is not a one-size-fits-all. And I think what the gentleman was talking about from building inspections, we have training classes that we do on this all the time that talk about the various statutes in South Carolina that deal with trespassing, and a lot of them exempt, for example, government officials doing their basic duties. And so that's not a concern at all that I would see in what this particular item is. But if you want to have a kind of a discussion about trespassing, we can happily do that. But that is not there's no magic answer to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
Yeah.
Mr. Farrow, I guess as a follow-up to that, would it be safe to say that our staff are following the law when it comes to these rules?
I don't have any concern about what they're doing, because what we talk about always is, first of all, we want to avoid any confrontation with the public because it's a public safety issue. So what we say is, look, if you're not invited or somebody tells you to go away, then back off and come back another day. You may actually have to get a search warrant or a deputy escort. So the last thing we want to do is have some confrontation. So yeah, they're following that, and with the emphasis not so much on private property rights, but interest on the safety of the people involved in a potential confrontation. So this is something we take very seriously in the training classes with these code enforcement officers, and they're concerned about their safety as well as the people they're going to interact with. So there's a lot more besides just the legal ramifications. There's the physical aspect to it, but they're doing exactly what they've been trained to do, as far as I know, and I don't think they did tend to depart from that.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, I believe you were trying to speak up earlier. Have we addressed what you wanted to get before us?
Yes, ma'am. I was simply going to make Mr. Malinowski's point that Brad was trying to answer his question.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Okay. Yes, Ms. Newton.
I do have an additional question for legal. So just to address the motion as made here, there's a section for county attorney's feedback that says we need to be very careful about violation of equal protection and the prohibition against spending public funds on private property, as there are really two parts of the original motion. Part one was that we not demolish it. And then the second part was that if we did demolish property involuntarily, that they would be done at the county's expense and not the property owner's expense. So I just want to clarify right now that in the case of what is termed in the motion an involuntary demolition, we are still assessing those fees to the property owner.
Ms. Newton, this is Mike Zapp, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
When it comes to the spending the funds on the private property, the question is everyone that that the county ends up doing is placed on a lien. So those funds are recouped through a lien, and that's another directive that's directed by the code itself in Chapter 1, as Randy Pruitt was referring to. So that would tell you that although we're not in the business of just going to tear somebody's home and spend the money, every opportunity is given to the homeowners to either fix the building. We rather than bring it back, restore it, than to end up putting a forcing demolition and putting a lien on the property.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just one more question for me, just because I am sort of new to this kind of item. In general, are the unsafe structures generally like sheds or garages, or can we speak to the general nature of these kinds of buildings, or just kind of across the board?
Madam Chair, Mike Zapp, may I?
Yes.
Ma'am, what you're looking at, there's a broad spectrum. I would say if we had to say there was a higher percentage, it would be abandoned and dilapidated mobile homes that you can see from the road. That's if I had to give you a count or a percentage, that it would be the higher percent. And then to your point, there's many just torn out sheds or old block buildings that people bought the property and they just didn't have anything to do with that structure. They put their new structure on. So that's mainly what you're looking at.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we still have before us items A, B, and C to approve the staff recommendations on these items. Are there any further questions from council?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Bill Malinowski.
Hearing none, I'll ask Ms.
Madam Chair.
Okay, yes, Mr. Malinowski.
All right, I've got a question on B, and just so you know, I also have a question on C following this.
Okay, great, thank you.
While the snow and ice removal agreement, I agree, it probably will not come into play. But some of the comments made there were that this is the opportunity that the county possibly could get a little additional money into the system, into the particular department, I guess. But when I read through that, on the first page of that agreement, down at number 7 at the bottom, when it says fuels, lubricants, and necessary repairs and maintenance are furnished by the county. So my question is, if we've got a motor grader out there and some type of a hidden cutoff pipe or a manhole while somebody's removing some snow or ice from a road, and it damages that motor grader to an extent that, I mean, it's not cheap to repair these particular pieces of equipment. So have we actually looked at the potential cost of large repairs to include up to replacing the machinery if need be, depending on what happens, if somebody slides off the road into a ditch or rolls it? So, I mean, are we betting a lot to gain a little in this situation? Has that been thoroughly looked into? Only because the cost of this equipment is not cheap.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski, for that consideration. Is anyone from staff prepared to speak to that?
Chairperson Teresa, we have staff from DPW, Mr. Chris Eversman. He is on the line and he can address the question.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Chris Eversman here from Public Works. I would just make the general statement that wear and tear, routine repairs that might be incidental to the employment of equipment, that is reflected in our operating budget, which is appropriated by the county. And I would also say that that is reflected in the Davis-Bacon reimbursement rates. So a lot of things go into the determination of those rates, like I say, to include wear and tear. If it were something that were, large scale and significant, we would, to a certain degree, eat those costs. If it were a catastrophic incident, then we are insured. So that's kind of the best answer I can provide. I will say.
What's the name? Put their name and stuff on it.
I will say that as a matter of routine in the past, we have performed these services on behalf of the state. And again, probably on the order of every 4 or 5 years. And because there has not been an agreement of this nature in place, we've not gotten the benefit of any reimbursement. So from that standpoint, it is certainly to our benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Eversman. That answers my question on that. And the only other question I have on this item is, what do our operators, I guess I'll say motor grader operators, normally get per hour?
Yes, sir. I can't answer that off the top of my head.
How about a ballpark?
Typically, an equipment operator 2, who will operate. It depends on seniority and everything like that. Let's say, on the order of $18 to $24 per hour. I'm just again kind of pulling that off the top of my head. And again, there are a lot of factors. And I would also point out that, the Davis-Bacon, that kind of corrects for the county as far as the wage rates, and also, depending on whether we're standby or actually deployed, the DOT will apply a multiplier for that. So, like I say, it may not be a big money maker, but it does enable us to recoup some funds for our efforts.
Okay, the reason I asked that is in the one area it said that under some executive order, the hourly minimum wage was $10.80 per hour. And of course, it did cite this Davis-Bacon Act, but then I don't know to what extent the Davis-Bacon Act comes in to raise the $10.80 per hour. The employees of the county would be compensated at a rate that's well enough that they'd be willing to do it then?
Yes, sir. Our employees will be compensated at their existing rate. It's just a matter of how much the DOT will be reimbursing us for our overall efforts.
Right.
So in other words, no one is going to take a pay cut in order to perform this work on behalf of the state.
Right, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that the county wasn't going to incur additional costs by working them for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Ms.
Thank you.
Teresa?
So, yes.
Hi, this is Elizabeth from legal. If I may, today we were discussing in the legal department the possibility of this agreement, which is actually really good, but if we could have you vote on adding a sentence to it that just makes it clear that there will be no operators of this equipment that are not county employees only on equipment.
Okay. I believe Mr. Manning was the maker of the motion. Okay. And then
Thank you.
Ms. Newton. Ms. Newton, would you accept that amendment?
I do.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Malinowski, does that complete your questions? So I believe we have these matters. Ms. Only, will you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Teratio,
Wait a minute. I was muted. Remember I said I had a question on C, but I wanted to give anybody else the opportunity to speak on B if they had a question.
Okay. Are we complete with B? Other council members?
Yes, and I do remember him saying that.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a quick one. This is this C-tip that you have in front of you now. That was, I think, back, well, the administrator made comment in his email in November. It was actually at an October DNS meeting, and it went to the full council, and the full council voted it down. So my question is, why is it back at the committee level if it's already been at the council level? Why haven't whatever changes or additional information that there would be? I thought once it gets to the council level, we've said that it stays at the council level. Shouldn't go back to the committee unless directed.
Okay. Staff, would you like to speak to that question?
Chairperson,
Yes, Dr. Thompson.
if I can speak to address Mr. Malinowski's question. I'm not sure why it came back to the committee, but let me say we have addressed the council's concerns, two concerns. One concern was that the C-tip that staff set forth did not include dirt roads. And so now this modified C-tip includes dirt roads. And the other thing was that we were addressing abandoned roads and in essence, addressing abandoned roads over dirt roads. And so the abandoned roads have been removed from this C-tip. Thank you.
Okay, and my last comment to make then, or question, would be the normal practice, in my understanding, is when items come back for changes, that the changes are either underlined, crossed out if need be, written in a different color so we can see exactly what they are. I did not see any of that in here, and therefore I personally did not go back and review it with a lot of great detail because I thought it was incumbent on staff to provide us what these changes are. So I would like to see those types of changes written in by the time this gets to the council meeting, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm finished.
Okay. Any other questions, councilors?
Chairperson Tracy. Chairperson Tracy.
Yes.
Hey, once again, John Thompson. We have Director Maloney. I think he wants to add a comment.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair. I just, we did get a new briefing document form, and we brought it back because you know, the committee what the committee recommended is different now by adding dirt roads to it. And I think by the time we have council meeting, I can have the places where we changed the roads actually in the C-tip highlighted for you, so that will be ready.
Thank you so much for that. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Manning.
over in the participants, 1-803-786-0062 has their hand raised.
Okay.
I don't know if that's from Alvin Escalin or that's a phone number or what that is.
Okay. Would the person with their hand raised identify themselves? Okay. All right. So we'll just assume that's no longer valid. I believe we're ready to vote on items 4A, B, and C at this point. Ms. Only, will you call the roll?
Teratio,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Madam
Thank
Chair, I'll
you.
move for reconsideration.
Okay, is there a second for that? Great. It's been moved and properly seconded. Ms. Only, will you call the roll for reconsideration?
Madam Chair, why would you reconsider something in the committee? It has to go to the full council anyway.
Well, I don't know. Do we have to, we don't have to approve these minutes before they go to full council, do they?
Never has been before. We meet on the fourth Tuesday of the month, and the first Tuesday of the month is at council with the recommendations. There's no minutes approved until the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, there's a
Someone
motion
speak.
on the
Madam
floor.
Chair.
Madam Chair, you either need to rule it out of order or.
Okay,
Madam-
yes, Miss Kennedy.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure you knew I was on the line.
Yes, Miss Kennedy, thank you for being here.
Okay.
Since it seems like we do not need this recommendation, I'll just rule Mr. Manning's lovely thought of reconsideration order. We'll move on to item 5, items
Madam
pending
Chairperson?
analysis. Yes, is this Dr.
John
Thompson?
Thompson, can I be recognized? Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
What I'm requesting that this committee forth to the special called meeting on this evening, items 4B and 4C, and regarding Mr. Malinowski's concern with 4C, staff is going to get him prior to that meeting a red line or highlighted version of the changes to that briefing document so he can see the changes that were made, again, to highlight the 2 items that we added, dirt roads and remove abandoned roads.
I guess I would be okay with forwarding it. I guess it would be up to the chair to whether he would amend tonight's agenda for that.
Yes,
Is that how
ma'am.
that- Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Madam Chair, I'd move for reconsideration so that that could be possible.
Okay, should we
Second.
just do B and C?
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
That's fine with me to just do B and C for reconsideration.
all right. So I'll call the roll for reconsideration for items 4, B, and C, so that those items can move on if the chair so desires. Or the chair and the council so desire.
Horatio,
Yes.
Manning,
No.
Oh, sorry, no. I'm sorry, reconsideration, no.
Newton,
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you all for bearing with us on that one. Okay, so now we will move to items 5. These are just items pending analysis actions required on them. 5A is I move to evaluate affordable housing options to include the option of establishing an affordable housing trust fund for Richland County as a benefit to the public. I won't read the rest of that one since it's long. 5B is I move to direct the county attorney to work with the county administrator to research and draft an absentee landlord ordinance. The ordinance should provide potential remedies for individuals who violate county ordinances and provide via supplemental documentation a comprehensive review of the legal impacts potentially associated with the adoption of such an ordinance. And then 5C is new, amend the county's current ordinance in order to allow lighting on Broad River Road. That was submitted by Ms. Dickerson. Item 6 is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, Ms.
Madam-
Newton. Ms.
I didn't realize we were going to get a motion so fast. I just wanted to make a quick note on these items requiring analysis. As we were reviewing council rules and proposed changes to rules in the Rules and Appointments Committee, our current rules state that when items are in the pending analysis category, that there be information provided as to what the status is or what is being analyzed and how things stand. So I just wanted to point that out so that when these items come back before us, we can have that information that just says, you know, what type of analysis is happening.
Thank you. And I'll just ask at this point, are there any updates on these items pending analysis from staff?
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, Ms. Powell?
Following conversations that were had both at the last committee and subsequent to that committee, both of these items moved back to the staff work group. So there's not a comprehensive update to give at this time, but we will certainly look forward to include further detail on the following committee agenda.
Okay, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, may I
All
be
right.
recognized?
Yes, I'm sorry. Who is that?
Ms. Shia Myers.
Oh, hi, Ms. Myers. Yes, of course.
In relation to item 5E, I have requested that the county attorney's office provide a updated ordinance per the request of.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Myers.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that now I'm sorry for the rush. I'll move us on to item 6, adjournment. Is there
Move
a
to
motion
adjourn.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Kennedy. All
Yes.
right. It's been moved and properly seconded. Miss Only, will you call the roll for adjournment?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for a productive meeting. See
Thank
you
you.
soon. All right. Thanks.